amongst all the other stories that we've heard about how trans people are so spoopy and terrible and bad for the world, we also hear about like, oh, trans women have a terrible advantage in sports. Like they're so spoopy to all of the cis women. They're so bad. And oh, if you let trans women participate in sports, then there will be no such thing as women's sports anymore. I thought a cute little article came across my timeline that I thought we could read. And the title of this article is Trans Women Athletes Have No Unfair Advantage Under Current Rules, Report Finds. This is from Cycling Weekly. The byline says, the performance advantages from social factors, training, and access to equipment are far greater than testosterone, this paper concludes. A report on trans women athletes in elite sport has found that if UCI rules are adhered to, there is currently no substantial evidence of any biological advantages for trans women competing in elite women's sport. It found that there was little evidence that biomedical factors related to male puberty, such as lung size, bone density, and hip-to-knee joint angle, predict an unfair advantage. But there is some evidence that social factors like nutrition, training, and access to equipment may have an effect. These are the key findings listed in an 86-page report titled, quote, Transgender Women Athletes and Elite Sport, a Scientific Review, which was published in late 2022, commissioned by the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport, which is an ethical sport advocacy nonprofit with a vision of fair, safe, accessible, and inclusive sport for everyone. So, of course, if there is a real concern with trans women in the sports, like, we can't just take away their access. You know, the correct thing to do is to like let them participate to some extent and like conduct studies, like see what the actual result is. Oh, are cis women actually losing a lot compared to trans women, or what is the actual real deal happening here? The inclusion of trans women in elite women's sport has been a hot button issue of late, with high profile instances such as Emily Bridges' attempt to compete in the UK sparking concern and upset on all sides, while the inclusion of trans women has led to protests by those who worry that cis women are at a competitive disadvantage in some races, in some U.S. races. However, this report has concluded that, quote, the fears that cis women need be protected from trans women in elite sport are unsubstantiated and misplaced. The things that threaten women's elite sport for cis and trans women, it's not trans women, but rather misogyny in the form of underfunding, non-parity in participation and leadership, equitable sports space allocation/access, and a range of sporting opportunities not afforded to women, both cis and trans, in equitable ways. So it's actually showing that like the biggest differences are that men's sports get a lot of like, sports space allocation/access. You know, the funding tends to go into the men's sports significantly more. And it's not just like women's version of men's sports. Like volleyball is a women's sport that doesn't get as much funding as football. We're not even talking about women's football leagues, which are their own thing, or like women's basketball leagues, which are their own thing, and also are underfunded and considered like unserious and stuff. Yeah, this report is an in-depth review of all of the scientific literature currently published between 2001 and the end of 2021 in English, and which regard transgender women and their participation in elite sport. We're relying only on peer-reviewed articles or syntheses of academic literature in reputable academic journals. And the study explores both the biomedical and sociocultural perspectives when it comes to the question of transgender inclusion in sports. The testosterone advantage. The biomedical perspective is the primary consideration of sports governing bodies around the globe and commonly the center of the fairness debate. Many trans athlete inclusion policies, the UCI's included, look to testosterone level boundaries and medicalized interventions, such as the suppression of testosterone suppression and supplementation of estrogen, to level the playing field. After reviewing the scientific literature of the past decade, however, the report finds that not only are these boundaries arbitrary, the studies are flawed and inconclusive. Yeah, these boundaries are arbitrary. Like, cisgender women can fall outside of the range of acceptable testosterone levels, right? Yeah, Willow Oak, welcome to the website, pointing out there are co-ed sports, as in, like, my mom played co-ed softball, so I don't get it. Yeah, it actually turns out the secret is, like, the real spooky secret is that if you just let women compete against men, they are competitive against men. And like the primary reason why women's sports is segregated is that men felt threatened by the participation of women. Like once women start participating and they start winning, then, male supremacy is threatened. Fundamentally, keep in mind that like everything about the transphobic position is predicated on male supremacy. Like we don't really phrase it that way, but like, you know, in the same way that we have white supremacy, which is the idea that white people are significantly better than black people and everyone else of any other color. You know, like white people are just naturally God's chosen people. They're naturally gifted. They're naturally better. They naturally deserve more things. There is also male supremacy at the heart of a lot of patriarchal views, a lot of transphobic views. Exactly. TERFs are male supremacists. They just also hate men. They are male supremacists. They believe that males are inherently more powerful, inherently stronger physically and mentally. That is fundamentally what is at the root of a lot of these beliefs. Anyway, going back to this, the review points to shortcomings such as using non-athletic trans women as subjects, inadequately adjusting data for factors such as height or weight, little understanding of the disadvantageous effects of hormone therapy, not differentiating between performance-enhancing doping and naturally occurring serum testosterone, or the little attention given to the fact that distribution of testosterone levels between elite cisgender men and elite cisgender women athletes overlaps. Exactly. There are some elite cisgender men with lower T and elite cisgender women athletes with higher T. The analysis did not show support for the argument that testosterone exposure and the biomedical factors related to male puberty, such as lung size, bone density, and hip to knee joint angle, lead to athletic advantages. Quote, there is not one discrete biomarker that allows easy comparison of athletes' bodies to each other in terms of performance. Athletes are a sum of all their advantages and disadvantages, which results in performance. So while sport-specific studies on performance advantages are lacking, the review did find evidence to indicate trans women who have undergone testosterone suppression have no clear biological advantages over cis women in elite sport, stating, quote, while an advantage in terms of lean body mass, cross-section area, and strength may persist statistically after 12 months, there is no evidence that this translates to any performance advantage as compared to elite cis women athletes of similar size and height. So, and then the loss of these strength markers continues after that initial 12 months of suppression. And as of today, no significant studies indicate at what rate or how long this loss continues. Yeah, and then additionally, higher levels of red blood cell count, they normalize within 4 months of starting testosterone suppression. And then after gonad removal, a lot of trans women have lower T levels than that of premenopausal trans women, or premenopausal cis women, excuse me. However, there are social scientific disadvantages. So I don't really care as much about this section because I'm just like, okay, I trust that you did a study, and they're like, this is not as big of a consideration. We're usually looking more at the biomedical aspects of it. So they just concluded that there is no correlation between any of these biomarkers and any actual performance difference in sports. But there is some advantage to, like, if you were in men's football in high school and you did weightlifting every morning as part of being in men's football, and then you decide you're going to become a female weightlifter later on, well, you're going to know a lot of fundamental things about form and how to do it safely, and probably diet and stuff that you might not know otherwise. Interestingly, post-bottom surgery, cis women have more testosterone than trans women unless T gets added. Yeah, because once you remove the testes, you don't have any hormones in your body unless you're taking those hormones. Whereas, like, cis women with ovaries, like, their ovaries continue to produce small amounts of testosterone. Thank you so much for watching, and especially thank you to my patrons. I want to shout out some in particular. We got Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rolvag, Jovian F. Gaudreau, Bean, Amanda B., Danielle McDonald, Sarah A., R. Halverson, Wellington Marcus, Athiet, Michelle Winter, Nova, Suzanne Maynard, Elizabeth Bartell, Kevin Young, Sojo, and Mr. Atheist.